recently there's been a couple of earthquakes over here on the West Coast, California to be specific. And they were not small quakes. There was a 6.6, I believe, and a 7.0 within days of each other. That's not normal. And what is even more abnormal for me was the realization that I didn't feel either one of these earthquakes. I didn't feel either one in the slightest. Not at all. And the first time I got a text, and it was just, did you feel that earthquake? And da-da-da. And I was like, what earthquake? There's no earthquake. She was like, oh, they felt it in Mexico. They felt it here. They felt it there. And I was just, man, that's interesting. Brushed it off. Then a couple days later, another one. And they were talking about it at work. How it just, everything shook for almost a minute straight. They're in a restaurant, TV's shaking, or in the bathroom and the shower doors like rocking. I didn't feel that at all. And I said, now this is getting my attention, right? Synchronicities, serendipities, things that are not normal, but that create they make a statement so that you have to pay attention. You don't have to pay attention, but it beckons us to pay attention because there's a lesson, right? Or there's a message. And as we become more conscious, as we try to actively raise our consciousness, there's a lot of people coming forward, like here on YouTube, just regular people just sharing things that they feel guided to share. That guidance is their alignment with their intuition, with source, with the collective consciousness, the all mind, which we all share and have access to. Wisdom that will help guide us onward and upward in this journey to create heaven on earth, Christ consciousness, a place where we do not have to suffer, struggle, live in lack, live in competition, live in all of those lower dimensional, lower vibrational dynamics, right? So anyway, I get this message that you didn't feel that earthquake because you weren't on that plane at the time. I said, okay, didn't think anything of it. Okay, that makes sense. I'm just becoming more open to things, trying to just become more open to that whole concept from the movie Midnight Special. There's, like I mentioned in the other video, layers on layers of existences, worlds within worlds. So essentially, that's what it is all the time, right? At the same moment where it's night, for me, 11 p.m., there's another existence on the other side of the globe where it's daytime. At this moment where it's summer and it's hot, there's another existence for another person where it's freezing cold snow. At the moment where there's an earthquake for some, there's a hurricane for others, or there's neither. So that's the part where we're getting to, where you're just not experiencing certain shakeups and foundational upheavals, which are basically signs of purging, signs of growth, signs of shifting and releasing things that are not voluntarily let go of, things that we kind of cling to. So as above, so below, as within, so without. Wouldn't it match then that as we are growing and experiencing our growing pains and our awakening, our shifts, our conscious elevation, where we are purging things and where we're clearing out things and where we are releasing things, hopefully, if you're on the right track. No right and wrong, just different, right? Different stages of this, different levels. So too would the plane that you are on be purging, releasing, shifting, moving. And the more resistant you were to those changes, those releases, those experiences, the more in alignment you are with the outer expression of that turmoil or that upheaval. So in the greater scheme of your reality, your environment is going to reflect that earthquake. The earthquake within becomes the earthquake without, and you'll feel it to the severity or level that you are in alignment with it. Perhaps, just a theory. This is what was popped into my head. I didn't create the thought, so someone else did, something else did, so I'm paying attention to it. Ironically, in that same token, a lot of the messages coming up in tarot right now, since I don't, I'm on a mission to understand the tarot, and the messages from the story of the Fool through all the cards in the deck. And what's coming up a lot is the Tower card. I went and got my own deck from a really cool shop in Riverside. It's freaking awesome. And this is the card for you. The Tower represents a shakeup, a grand purge, much like the earthquake that we're experiencing. I'll just read it from the book right here. The Tower, the divinatory meanings of the Tower, which again is coming up in a lot of videos on the Twin Flame journey right now. What's going on with the twins is one or both is experiencing a Tower moment. And those are complete and sudden changes, breaking down of old beliefs, abandonment of past relationships, severing of friendship, changing one's opinion, unexpected events, bankruptcy, downfall, loss of stability, loss of security. Ooh. So that sounds daunting, right? That sounds pretty bleak, but what comes forth in that too is rise above the surface level understanding of that, instead of standing under the fear of what those things might play out with in a normal day-to-day experience. From a lower state of consciousness and awareness and understanding, rise a step higher to a level of understanding or seeing the other side. Get a different perspective. If the perspective you are standing under gives rise to suffering or misfortune, Spirit is calling forth for an evolution and an elevation, an elevation of your consciousness. Shift your perspective, get more clarity so that you can move above to a higher level of consciousness. So that would be in this realm of duality, seeing the other side, which in tarot is extremely easy to do because there's also the reading of the reversal. So the reversal of the Tower then is what? If the Tower comes up in this direction in a reading, the meaning now shifts to continued oppression, following old ways, living in a rut. Sorry. You get the gist. Following old ways, living in a rut, the inability to affect any worthwhile change, entrapment in an unhappy situation. Well, now that gives rise to a perspective, a shifted perspective. So now those first interpretations, when the card is upright, are less bleak. Those are all just things that are unexpected but bring forth change. The number 5 in numerology, which symbolizes freedom and change. Change breeds freedom, liberation, movement, shifting, growth. Like the ground has to be, the soil has to be disturbed and broken up in order for the seeds to kind of have that room to spread root and then flourish and grow into a strong tree. They need that foundation Sometimes you have to till that land. It has to be moved in a certain way, so to speak. So the tower then is not the end of the world. It's not a disaster. If you rise above that basic understanding, you see that the real detriment, the real risk is in those reversals, whereas you're not changing. Instead, you're continuing to be oppressed, where you're not breaking the mold and going a new direction. You're following the old ways, whereas you're not abruptly changing something in your life. You're instead living in a rut, unable to make worthwhile changes in life, and being trapped in unhappy situations. That's the real problem, is when the tower doesn't fall, when we refuse to let shaky foundations fall so that the new life can't grow from the soil that had to be tilled, the land that needed to be worked on. So then when we rise in our understanding of what these kind of experiences are and do for us in our lives, as within so without, if you get to a level of understanding, your foundation is more firm in knowing what the beauty is of a tower moment. You won't feel the effects or the ramifications of that tower moment in the same way that someone who's looking at it in a lower consciousness state might look at that very same tower moment. They're looking at it as the end of the world, where you're looking at it as from that higher, that bird's eye view, that eagle perspective, right? So in the larger scheme, you might not need that reflection in your outer world, as within so without. You might not need to feel the earthquake, the purging of the earth, the shakeup of the plane and the planet that we're upon, because you get it. You see, as you rise in consciousness, so too will your experiences and your outer world reflect that elevation. So that was just an interesting thing that came to me as to why perhaps I could be in the same space as others who are feeling something really strong and really profound and really, in some ways, scary, and I don't feel it at all. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm never going to feel another earthquake. That doesn't mean that someone who feels an earthquake is bad. No, there's people on the East Coast, again, like I said, that are having a hurricane right now. I'm not experiencing that hurricane. I'm no better than them, but I'm just in a different place. And in that way, Spirit's kind of showing that it'll shift you, move you to different places, spaces, and times where you will experience exactly what you're meant to experience. Exactly what is necessary for you to experience for your journey. Exactly what's necessary for you to experience for your lesson, for your mirror, for you to see how much in duality you're living and how much in oneness you're living. How much you stand under the circumstances and how much you overstand and are in a level of awareness. How much you're actively climbing the ladder and how much you're just sitting kind of on those lower 3 levels of your chakras, in survival, in sexuality, in ego, consciousness. I'm thinking solar plexus, sacral, and root chakra. So it's fascinating stuff, either way you look at it, just food for thought. And I thought that I would share. So go out there and shift your perspective. That's another great card in the tarot deck, if I can find it really quickly. The Hanged Man. He pauses. He puts himself on a pause intentionally so he can get some clarity on a situation. He puts himself on timeout, I guess you could say. There he is, the Hanged Man. Here he's on pause. Over here that crown is illuminated. and he's shifted. He's got a new perspective. He is enlightened. So just that shift is what it's all about, what we're learning right now. And I just really love the tarot right now. It's a great teacher of some of these lessons that I'm kind of getting a better intuitive grasp on right now. So whatever your tool, whatever your message, whatever your way of communing with the all mind, embrace it, enjoy it, do more of it, and share. Cheers.